Howdy folks, Jamboree here. So recently, a new Tom and Jerry movie has come out. It's a hybrid of live action and animation. It's had a pretty poor reception, which does beg the question, what makes a good Tom and Jerry movie? Well, in order to answer that, I think we need to look at the Tom and Jerry movies that have come before. Based on the beloved Hanna-Barbera cartoons, the Tom and Jerry movies are renowned for squashing Tom and Jerry into classic literature and beloved movies that don't really need them, resulting in disjointed and confusing films that underuse or miscast the cat and mouse. Sometimes the Tom and Jerry film will tell its own original story, but more often than not, even those could be uninspiringly boring or just weirdly nonsensical.
It's alive! Great wobbling wattles!
One of my biggest problems with these movies though has to be how they rarely justify their running time and end up stretching what could have been a 5-minute Tom and Jerry short into a bloated feature. However, after watching all 14 of these animated movies, I will say that not all of them are terrible. There's a few gems here and there that are worth your time. A small fraction that managed to show what makes a good Tom and Jerry feature film. And in this video, I'm going to be counting down my personal top 5 Tom and Jerry movies. A little heads up first though, the new Tom and Jerry movie that's just come out, that's not going to be a contender I'm afraid because, well, I've not seen it yet. Number 5. Tom and Jerry blast off to Mars. A fight between Tom and Jerry goes on for so long that the two of them end up on a rocket. This ship is being blasted off to Mars to investigate whether life exists on the planet. After concluding that Mars is empty, the astronauts decide to return home, leaving the cat and mouse stuck in space. Jerry then meets a society of Martians who mistake him for being a chosen one, and worship him as an idol. Tom finds the Martian civilization and accidentally destroys everything. The Martians learn of Jerry's association with Tom, as well as their earthly origins, and they plan to invade Earth to start a war. Now, a few years ago I posted a pretty negative written review of this movie on my blog site, but you know what? I think I was talking out of my bloody arse back then, and I take back a lot of the things I said. After revisiting Blast Off to Mars, I have to say that this is one of the far better Tom and Jerry animated movies you can watch. For starters, it has the best Tom vs Jerry fights out of all the films. Every confrontation is well timed, consistently engaging, and rhythmically tight. I love how each fight escalates in creative ways, one painful gag building into another. It's great. But it's not just the violence that's imaginative. The science fiction in Blast Off to Mars is equally inventive. Making the Martians mouse-sized is a clever way of helping Jerry relate to their race, and inspires Tom to be seen as a formidable giant monster from their perspective. Oh, and Martian cuisine is creatively strange and weird as well. I freaking love gross alien food. Plus, the design of the Martian city is kind of unique. It's sort of a hybrid mix of vintage retro and cyber-futuristic, almost akin to how Hanna-Barbera would have possibly portrayed a Martian city back in the 1960s, which is super charming. I also really like the Martian character of Peep. She may be a love interest for Jerry, but she's still her own character, being the only rational Martian on the planet and a constant voice of reason in the story. I have to admire her courage to betray her own people to protect Tom and Jerry's world too. That's a pretty brave and bold decision to make.
Cat, no why? Peep is a traitor! She helped the invaders escape!
I'll admit that Peep takes center stage for most of the finale, with Tom and Jerry just following her orders and instructions, but there's something amusingly poignant about the idea of a galactic war against Earth being the reason for the cat and mouse to stop fighting. The astronauts might only be in half of the film, but the fact that they have quite childlike minds for such serious jobs makes them pretty funny at times, with voice actors Billy West and Jess Harnell playing them with a silly self-awareness.
Rock beats a laser gun, right?
No, it doesn't.
Well, you win. You're just too good, Biff. You always win. Well then, out you go.
Right, that'll teach you.
Blast Off to Mars is a fairly funny, snappily paced, and energetically creative Tom and Jerry movie. I really regret being cynical about this film in the past, because I've come to appreciate the effort that went into its sci-fi world building and slapstick comedy. Number 4. Tom and Jerry, The Lost Dragon. In a little village, a wizard called Kaldorf announces that he's going to banish a powerful witch called Drizelda to the mountains, but he allows her niece Athena and her 2 pets Tom and Jerry to stay in the village. Many years later, Athena starts a refuge for animals in her home, with Tom and Jerry as her assistants, but the village people are reluctant to warm up to her, because she's an evil witch's niece and her rescued animals keep disturbing the community. One day, Athena finds an egg and it hatches into a baby dragon, who assumes that Tom is its mother. Meanwhile, Drizelda is after a baby dragon to help with her evil plan. Can Athena, Tom and Jerry protect this lost dragon from Drizelda? And will they be able to find its mother? Now, this is less of a Tom and Jerry movie and more Athena story. However, at least Tom and Jerry aren't in the film just for the sake of it. They still fight each other frequently like they do, it's just that they're in the roles of comic relief animal sidekicks this time. A bit like Abu in Aladdin or the mice in Cinderella, which perfectly fits the Disney-esque story that the movie is going for. Heck, I think the film finds the right balance of making them both rival pets and Athena's supportive friends. What I enjoyed the most about this movie though is how relatable it is. It's about an outcast woman who has a special bond with animals, but longs for intimate relationships with her own kind. That's very easy to resonate with if you suffer from loneliness or social anxiety and your pets are your only friends.
Don't get me wrong, you're all fine company, but still I need to find a place for me.
You could argue that the village people are being mean-spirited towards Athena, but think about things from their perspective. They've been traumatized by Drizelda the witch, and Athena's pets keep disrupting their lives, so they do have a right to be cautious and defensive. It's Kaldorf, who's like a wise, kind grandfather figure to Athena, who does all he can to help Athena feel part of the village, and he's the only one willing to scold the elves for their prejudices.
Sense seems to be at a premium here. If everyone had just opened their eyes and seen Athena as the kind-hearted soul she is, maybe this whole calamity could have been avoided.
Oh, and the villagers do eventually go out of their way to warm up to Athena, even though it's kind of last minute.
Athena! Yes, Emily?
I've been such a fool! Can you ever forgive me?
Oh, of course.
Drizelda herself is your typical evil sorceress trope, the kind that every animated fairy tale movie has. But she's also a lot more than that, because she resembles everything that Athena doesn't want to be. Athena loves animals with all her heart. Drizelda wants to exploit animals to aid her evil schemes. Athena just wants to fit into the village and have a normal, healthy life. Drizelda only cares about using magic to have power over the village. This really works into Athena's character arc, because she's trying to prove that she isn't tempted by the allure of the dark arts, and has the villagers' safety in her best interests. Yes, this isn't Tom and Jerry's turn in the spotlight despite their names being in the title, but there's so much relatable drama to Athena's journey of self-discovery and desire to be loved by her own kind. Tom and Jerry might not be the leads, but they fill their purpose of comic relief sidekicks to an animal-loving heroine just fine, which is way more commendable than letting them interfere with someone else's story by shoving them into the background. Number 3. Tom and Jerry, A Nutcracker Tale. Jerry the Mouse is very passionate about the Nutcracker Ballet, and feels sad that he won't get to see it again for another year. Luckily, magic helps him to reenact the whole classic story, with himself as the Nutcracker and Tom as the Cat King's henchman. There's certainly an adorable innocence to this film, being the most wholesome of all the Tom and Jerry movies. While it's not completely accurate to the Nutcracker story, you can tell that the filmmakers genuinely wanted to capture the spirit of the ballet using Tom and Jerry. It often decides to take things in its own goofy direction, but every scene ties in nicely with Tchaikovsky's music at the same time. Most animation studios like to use his public domain score as a cheap alternative to composing new music. But this movie seems to sincerely love Tchaikovsky's Nutcracker score. The choice to cast Jerry as a small but plucky nutcracker and Tom as the king's devious yet loyal henchman was perfect. These roles give them the opportunity to be a central focus in the film, while also staying true to their famous rivalry. Tom could have easily been cast as the Cat King, which wouldn't have worked in my opinion, because then we would have to wait until the finale to see Tom fight Jerry. Making him the henchman lets him be himself way more. The Cat King we do get is tyrannical, but also very, very dopey. He's a villain who stands out as the most hilarious character in the film. Seriously, this guy is a riot.
Hey, little lady, what's going on here? A string attached to keys can only mean one thing. Lake time!
Your Majesty, I have some... What is going on here?
Me and the little ballerina are playing keys.
Oh.
So yeah, A Nutcracker Tale is an endearing Tom and Jerry movie that you can tell was made with love. It wonderfully blends the whimsical fantasy of the original Nutcracker story with the traditional Tom and Jerry formula, resulting in a cartoony fever dream that's funny, strange, magical, and cute all at the same time. Number 2. Tom and Jerry, Robin Hood and his Merry Mouse. In this movie, Jerry is part of Robin Hood's gang of merry men, as well as Robin's personal messenger to Maid Marian, who is working undercover as a spy at Prince John's castle, while Tom is the royal cat of arms for the Sheriff of Nottingham. Out of all the Tom and Jerry crossover movies, this has to be the best of the bunch. Tom and Jerry are actually sharing the story with these folklore characters, rather than being shoved into the background for no solid reason. Tom really wants to impress his boss, who's hyped up the reputation of cats being able to defeat mice, while Jerry wholeheartedly believes in Robin Hood's movement and knows how important it is for him to deliver the letters to Maid Marian, giving them mutual reasons to relentlessly fight each other in the main story. This is exactly how you do a crossover movie right. The cat and mouse rivals do eventually become friends later on, but not because the filmmakers have given up the Tom and Jerry formula. No, Tom actually goes through his very own redemption arc as a minion. Tired of the sheriff's abuse and lack of respect, Tom remembers who the real king is and who he's supposed to be fighting for. It's a very patriotic change of heart that makes his new bond with Jerry seem sincere. Oh, and best of all, the film oozes so much classical charm. It really understands the appeal of the Robin Hood legend. The tale of a dashing, kind-hearted and charismatic hero who fights for love, charity and justice. I couldn't help but constantly smile at this movie's version of Robin Hood. He's just so lovably jolly.
Gentlemen, I put it to you, as the best archer in all of England, I should be crowned as such and win this purse of gold for the poor.
Plus his friendship with Jerry is adorable, because he's realistic about the mouse's physical limitations, but always wants to find ways to let Jerry feel part of the merry men.
Here, Jerry, give Maid Marian this. It's my lucky charm, for her to replace the one she gave me. No? How about this, then? That is a very lucky spoon. It saved my life once. No? Then what? That is an excellent idea. Well done, Jerry Mouse.
Our villains are very entertaining to watch too, from a sneeringly evil Sheriff of Nottingham that's reminiscent of Alan Rickman in Prince of Thieves.
Maid Marian, as the default winner of the archery contest, I believe I'm owed that kiss. What do you have there?
Nothing, my lord.
A letter? To Robin Hood? You're the spy?
To a flamboyantly campy Prince John who loves money so much that it could be considered a weird kink.
We can't find nobody, but we found this stuff in the prince's room. Don't look, son. I'll explain it when you're older.
Robin Hood and his Merry Mouse is simply good swashbuckling fun, and a film that avoids a lot of the trappings that the Tom and Jerry crossover movies fall into. It remains true to the soul of the British folklore that inspired it, while implementing the cat and mouse duo into the story in the best way possible. I genuinely really enjoyed it. Before I reveal my number one favourite Tom and Jerry movie, I'd just like to remind folks to consider subscribing to my channel. And to those already subscribed, please click the notification bell to be alerted about my new video releases. Number 1. Tom and Jerry the Fast and the Furry. When Tom and Jerry lose their home, they decide to enter a racing competition to win a mansion. They not only have to compete against each other for the prize, but also a bunch of other equally eccentric racers. I honestly had so much fun with this movie. Yes, it's a simple setup, but that's all that's needed for a Tom and Jerry story. And it's well executed simplicity. I mean, the cat and mouse have a strong incentive to win, because they both need a new home, and the huge fancy mansion looks worth winning a race for. Not to mention the race presenters mock their abilities to win the race because they're a cat and mouse, which just makes them want to win even more to prove themselves.
Wow, I didn't realize that vermin were eligible, Biff.
And who on earth gave this pussycat a driver's license?
Plus, the racing competition gives a fresh spin to the usual Tom vs Jerry formula, by making these two rivals duke it out in a contest of speed. This changes up the dynamic a bit, while also staying true to the spirit of the original Hanna-Barbera cartoons. The other races are very entertaining to follow too. They either play in our expectations, like a demonic Soul Reaper with a casual laid-back attitude.
Did you train that bird yourself?
Oh no, Kanargak's soul belongs to that of a vanquished foe who's now trapped and forced to serve when summoned.
Can it talk? Could we get an exclusive interview with it?
I actually have to get going. I'm falling behind.
Right. Well, good to see you again, Gorthon. Destroyer of Light.
Thank you, Buzz. Always great to see you.
And a granny who challenges the elderly stereotype by being surprisingly tough and aggressive.
Well, it's a wonderful competition. It's good for a person to participate in old-fashioned clean, wholesome fun!
Or some characters can work into a charming trope that we instantly recognize. Like a wholesome soccer mom who sticks out like a sore thumb because she's so normal compared to everyone else.
Oh no, don't go that way, little mouse. The race is this way. Yeah. My van sank in the quicksand, so I guess I'm out. Here, have an orange. It'll give you energy. Good luck!
The race itself is really exciting because the TV executive keeps throwing curveballs at the drivers, constantly adding wild obstacles or late extensions to the race to keep us on our toes. This Hollywood mogul is so desperate to retain his high ratings that we never know what he'll change up next.
Listen up, Irving. This race is taking too long. The public have the attention span of a Cocker Spaniel, so you'd better speed up the last leg of this race or your sorry butt goes bye-bye.
It's a test of imagination as well as driving skills. So expect these characters to resort to quirky ideas or sneaky tricks to win the day, quite like another Hanna-Barbera cartoon, Wacky Races. This film makes Tom and Jerry into the stars of a fast-paced racing story, while giving the rivals a strong motivation to drive and a reason for them to be in the forefront of the narrative. It's a very fun sports cartoon comedy that made me realize that these characters can be movie stars if used right. So those to me are the top 5 best Tom and Jerry movies. Which are your favourites? Let me know in the comments section below. And don't forget to click that like button. Cheerio, folks.